Any rain confined to northwestern hills and coasts. But it will turn increasingly wet for western Scotland in particular by the end of the night. With thicker cloud and a bit more of a breeze overnight, temperatures will hold up. A frost-free night for all of us, but a cloudy start to the day, and in northern and western Scotland, an increasingly wet start to the day. That wet and increasingly windy weather sweeps its way across the rest of Scotland, Northern Ireland, into northern England by lunchtime, as well as Wales. Coastal gales accompanying the rain, and the rain heavy over western hills. But it's replaced by sunshine and showers in Scotland and Northern Ireland, and ahead of it, some dry weather and also a mild day for all of us, 12 to 14 Celsius. The rain eases as it pushes south across southern parts of the UK on Saturday evening, clears away by midnight, and then clear spells, but increasingly windy across the UK, particularly in the north, and for northern Scotland, risk of gales or severe gales combined with high seas could be some significant coastal impacts. Showery rain continues for Scotland, but elsewhere it dries up through the night with some clear spells or some sunshine as we begin Sunday. Still, though, a windy day to come, especially over the higher ground of northern England and Scotland, and to the east of higher ground. Could be some transport disruption because of those gusty winds. But for most, Sunday's looking drier than Saturday with some brightness, and it stays changeable next week.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello and welcome, I'm Nana Akua, and for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show, as ever, is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is comedian Abby Roberts, and also writer and commentator John Gaunt. Now, before we get into the debate, let's get your latest news headlines.
Hello, I'm Karen Roberts. This is your news at 4 o'clock. The Education Secretary, Nadhim Zahawi, has admitted the government made a mistake when it combined a vote on disciplinary procedures with a Tory MP's suspension. Owen Paterson faced a 30-day ban for breaching lobbying rules, but a Conservative vote blocked the recommendation before a U-turn was made. He's now officially resigned. The former Cabinet Minister has tweeted to say he's stepping aside from consultancy work to focus on his family and suicide prevention. Yorkshire County Cricket Club has announced the appointment of Lord Patel as its new chairman and director. The club is vowing to do whatever it takes to regain trust after former player Azim Rafiq accused it of institutional racism. The former chairman, Roger Hutton, quit earlier today in the wake of the allegations. 2 other board members have also resigned. England and Wales Cricket Board SEO Tom Harrison confirmed the incident is being taken very seriously.
Strong action is being taken in response to this, where trust has been breached, where there is a fault line, where there are problems, and the message we're sending out is we are taking action and we will listen.
The European Commission Vice President says that he's disappointed by the UK's efforts to reach an agreement on the Northern Ireland Protocol. Maros Sefcovic announced EU proposals that would create an express lane for goods through simplified certification and reduced checks. But he claims after a third round of talks with Britain's Brexit Minister Lord Frost, they are no closer to an agreement. The 2 men will meet for continued talks in London next week.
We have seen no move at all from the UK side. I find this disappointing, and once again I urge the UK government to engage with us sincerely. Our aim should be to establish stability and predictability for Northern Ireland. We hear a lot about Article 16 at the moment. Let there be no doubt that triggering Article 16 to seek the renegotiation of the protocol would have serious consequences.
A record-breaking 853 migrants crossed the English Channel on Wednesday. The Home Office confirmed the number, which tops the previous daily record of 828 set in August. Earlier, French authorities said 2 migrants died this week while attempting the journey. More than 21,000 migrants have now made the crossing to the UK this year, double the total for 2020. Pfizer has announced that its antiviral pill for COVID-19 cuts hospital admission rates and deaths by 89%. The preliminary results are based on a study of 775 adults. It follows yesterday's announcement that molnupiravir had become the first pill to be approved for use in the UK. Reports of sexual harassment and sexual offences to British Transport Police have risen by 63% since before the pandemic. Over 400 reports have been made between April and October this year. That's up from 250 in the same period in 2019. The force says the increase is evidence that more people understand this behaviour is unacceptable. Meanwhile, the number of officers who are specially trained to investigate sexual offences has almost tripled. A 5th teenager has been found guilty of killing 15-year-old Keon Lincoln, who was shot and stabbed outside his home in Birmingham. Kieran Donaldson has been convicted of manslaughter, having been accused of helping and supplying weapons for the attack. Yesterday, 4 teenagers, including a 14-year-old gunman, were convicted of the schoolboy's murder. Young activists are marching through the centre of Glasgow, demanding action from leaders and politicians as COP26 climate talks continue. The protest has been organised by the school strike movement, Fridays for Future. Environmental campaigner Greta Thunberg and other global youth activists will speak to the crowds at the end of the march. A life-sized cake of Sir David Attenborough has been unveiled at the Cake International Show in Birmingham. Artists across the UK collaborated on the creation to mark the naturalist and broadcaster's 95th birthday earlier this year. The cake features Sir David surrounded by his favourite things such as animals, plants, butterflies and even a giraffe. Well, that's your news update. I'll be back in half an hour with the latest headlines. Now let's return to Nana Akua.
Now, I'm all for recycling and reusing and good housekeeping in general, so looking after the rivers and the oceans, reducing plastic and maintaining the biodiversity of the environment. But what I'm not into is this, hypocrisy. It's actually a new word that I created this afternoon, actually to reflect the nonsense that I'm observing from COP26. We've heard this all before, we're supposedly saving the planet, but let's be truthful, we're really just trying to save ourselves on it. We're hoping that we can have an impact on an ever-changing, unpredictable living thing. So according to Boris Johnson, the world is at 1 minute to midnight in the fight against climate change. Sorry, was he saying his flight was at 1 minute to midnight? If we ignore the private jets that he and the other 25,000 delegates took to attend COP on Wednesday, Boris Johnson took another private jet from the conference to Glasgow to a dinner at a London club. Now, this journey is apparently likely to have produced at least 980 kilograms more carbon emissions per passenger than if he'd taken the train. The Prime Minister basically opted for the highest carbon form of transport known to man currently that is of any relevance. And according to the Campaign for Better Transport, if he'd practiced what he'd preached and taken the train, the 400-mile journey from Scotland would have given off just 20 kilograms of CO2 per passenger. And in an attempt to show how green COP truly is, electric cars were used. However, the lack of electric car chargers meant that the cars had to resort to diesel to generate their power. So proving that even they, with their limited numbers, were unable to show electric cars as a viable option. Yet we're to scrap our fossil fuel burning ones in less than 10 years. And of course, when the battery goes in an electric car, presumably, you'd have to buy a new one, won't you, when the battery dies? Think of your mobile phone battery. Great at keeping the charge for the first year, but gradually becoming more inefficient until it dies. Boris Johnson's also calling on countries like Brazil and Indonesia to stop tearing down the rainforests. In the UK, we produce electricity from burning 25 million trees a year, and a biomass power station receives over £2 million a day in green subsidies, but releases more carbon into the atmosphere than coal. The energy it creates is classed as renewable because new trees are planted, but guess what? It will take decades, if not centuries, to reverse the environmental damage. They call this offsetting. Yes, more like offsetting the damage. COP is like a smoker who's planning to quit. It all starts tomorrow. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. On the way, scientists at Oxford University have found people with a specific piece of DNA could be at more risk from coronavirus. The gene has specific links to your heritage. We'll discuss that with friend of the show, Dr. Catherine Millington-Sanders. Our great British debate this hour, should the UK introduce a blanket ban on e-scooters? This week, tube passengers have been evacuated from Parsons Green Station after an e-scooter exploded on the train. But it's not just exploding batteries. Almost 500 people were injured by riders on e-scooters in the UK last year. So is it time to put them away for good? And each Friday at 5 o'clock, we'll put the spotlight on a particular guest or a subject matter in my new feature, Friday Focus. This week, I'm joined by husband of the British Iranian aid worker, Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe. She's been detained in Iran since 2016. He's into his second week of a hunger strike outside the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office in London, calling on the government to do more to bring her home. Well, that's coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or send me a tweet at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Welcome back to my panel, Abby Roberts and also John Gaunt. So I wanted to talk about this story. Boris Johnson, he's talking about how we should do this wonderful thing, you know, not burn as much fossil fuel. But unfortunately, he took the private jet in between from one place to the next. He actually came from Rome initially to COP.
Yeah. What a surprise. Boris Johnson being a hypocrite. Whatever next. This whole thing. Do you know what? Every time... I mean, I've stopped... I don't watch any of it anyway because it makes me so seethe with anger when you see... You know that enormous globe? They've got the world that's lit up as kind of part of the... you know, it's almost like the Olympics, you know, when the Olympics, where they had that, you know, the wonderful set. They've got that... What do you think runs that? I mean, it's not. It haven't got some elves peddling in the background.
But they might do.
They might do. Yeah. It's like, I mean, it's all. Do you know what? To me,
They've got
this
free time till Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of free time. But to me, this is like a student union has taken over the world.
Yeah.
That's what's happened. There were people who used to go, "Oh, you're crazy with all your crazy ideas," and now these people are running the world, Nana.
And they're certainly running Boris Johnson. Look, Boris Johnson is a hypocrite for getting the jet, but I don't think we should focus too much on that because he's also the Prime Minister. I wanted him back from COP. I didn't want him at COP in the first place. So I wanted him to get back for Prime Minister's questions where we can democratically question him. I didn't realise he was coming back for a booze-up, shall we say, at the Garrett Club. And that is where he went. And he talked about 1 minute to save the planet or something. He wanted to make sure if he came on the train, he'd have only had 5 minutes before they called last orders. That's the disgusting thing about this story. He came back to have a booze up and a lovely meal, no doubt probably steak with great cheese.
You don't know that, but it could have been. I mean, we don't know what
you do kind of. The Garrett Club so far back in the last century, they still wouldn't let you two women in unless you came as guests. You can't be members.
Well, but I'm not fussed about it. If they want to do that, they all.
Yeah,
if they don't want to
let's talk about the fact
they do allow women in the club. Actually, that's not quite fair.
You can only come in as a
join.
guest. You cannot join. That's what I said. You cannot. Anyway, my point is, no doubt it would have been a big, fantastic meal, steak, port, wine, the rest of it.
Stilton.
But Stilton. But he's been telling us we should eat legumes and beans and basically never have meat.
Don't they give you more gas anyway, so you'll be emitting more methane?
Well, that this week. Yeah, you only have to look at a bean on a break.
You eat a bean burger, you see what happens to you. You'll be sitting on the wherever for a while or gassing out all your friends.
Oh, you know what, though? I'd rather that than the hot air that comes out of Boris Johnson's mouth. I'd rather it came out the other end. Because, anyway, sorry, darling.
We're talking climate change, and guess what? The Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg is currently making a speech in Glasgow, giving her thoughts on the climate crisis. Let's take a listen to what she has to say now.
We don't need any more empty promises. We don't need any more commitments that are full of loopholes and incomplete statistics and that ignore the historical emissions and climate justice. Yet, that is all that we are getting. And no, that is not radical to say. Just look at their track record. They have had 26 COPs. They have had decades of blah, blah, blah. And where has that led us? Over 50% of all our CO2 emissions have occurred since 1990, and about a third since 2005. All this while the media is reporting on what people in power say that they are going to do, rather than what they actually do. Time and time again, the media fails to hold the people in power responsible for their action and inaction. As they continue to expand fossil fuel infrastructure, opening up new coal mines, coal power plants, granting new oil licenses, and still refusing to do even the bare minimum, like delivering on the long-promised climate finance for loss and damage to the most vulnerable and least responsible countries. This is shameful. Some people say that we are being too radical, but the truth is that they are the ones who are radical. Fighting to save our life-supporting systems isn't radical at all. Believing that our civilization as we know it can survive a 2.7 degree or a 3 degree hotter world, on the other hand, is not only extremely radical, it's pure madness. Out here, we speak the truth. The people in power are obviously scared of the truth. Yet, no matter how hard they try, they cannot escape from it. They cannot ignore the scientific consensus, and above all, they cannot ignore us, the people, including their own children. They cannot ignore our screams as we reclaim our power. We are tired of their blah, blah, blah. Our leaders are not leading. This is what leadership looks like. Thank you for showing up, and see you tomorrow again at the march.
So Greta Thunberg talking live at Glasgow at COP26. I'm going to come to my panel, Abby and John. Abby, you mentioned about the school kids taking over.
Yeah, exactly, the student unions. And there she is, Greta. Do you know what made me laugh? Is like when she speaks, you're going to hear all the Glaswegians going, yeah, all the heroin addicts. Yeah,
No,
good
that's not
Greta.
fair.
Sorry.
No, that's not
a stereotype.
That is a stereotype.
That's not
but
fair.
I'm only saying that. Oh, I've gigged in Glasgow. It's actually a fantastic place. Unfortunately, it has been taken over by the far left, the SNP. But also, in all seriousness, Glasgow has terrible poverty, terrible drug problems, terrible alcohol problems. I mean, really bad. I mean, almost third world.
But we know that.
Third
we
world.
know that,
yeah.
though.
So why aren't we, as Margaret Thatcher said, charity begins at home. Focus on what Glasgow needs, not this kind of airy-fairy
but
stuff.
What's that got to do with COP at the moment? So I appreciate that that is the situation at Glasgow. It can be run down in areas, but
because
bring it back to COP.
Because COP26 is just it's like I said, it's the student union thing of going. I want unicorns to run the world.
But what about Greta Thunberg?
It's a fantasy.
She's making some valid points.
I'll tell you what it is about Greta. Greta then, in that speech, said, oh, you know, they're not listening to us, they're blah, blah, blah. Somebody should give her a new line, by the way. Her mum or dad, who write most of her scripts, I presume. But she goes, blah, blah, blah. She said, they're not listening to us. We, the youth, da-da-da. What do you mean they're not listening? Every leader, apart from China and Russia, have been in Glasgow. You silly little woman.
No. But the thing is, that's not fair, because you're saying blah, blah, blah. The point is that blah, blah, blah doesn't mean anything. She's not actually saying very much.
She said they're not listening. They are listening. What's happened at COP is not what the majority of people in this country want. The majority of people in this country have got other priorities, right? But what she's had, and people like her, what they've engineered, is this whole conference all about their concerns, these kids' concerns. I would say, Greta, be quiet. It's a bit like the dying fly. Now, please finish this. The dying fly at the supermarket. When my kids used to have a tantrum because they wanted sweeties at the checkout, my wife used to say, ignore them. And that's what we should be doing with Greta.
OK, I respect that. And I do think that, yes, she goes on a bit and, you know... But she has brought our attention and forced world leaders to listen to the younger generation, who ultimately will be those who are left on the planet, if there is one left.
Excuse me.
Sorry, let me finish.
We were doing that already.
Let me finish, John. Let me finish, John. I gave you the dying fly bit, so I think it's only fair that you let me...
Dying fly? Is that what it is?
Yeah, sort of
on the
like
floor.
that. Yeah. So,
sort of like that.
But the point is this, right? She's there. She is giving a perspective from a younger person's point of view, because ultimately we are stewards of this planet and we'll pass it on to them, and the condition that we pass it on to them is important for their survival. So my thoughts are this: when she talks about statistics about the CO2 and everything else, and she goes back in the day, my concerns are that we don't actually have statistics for hundreds of years ago, when we actually probably burnt way more CO2 when this place was really full of coal and things like that. And I also feel that they are, as you talked about Glasgow, there are other considerations. That she's very lucky. She's a middle-class, white lady who lives with obviously her parents who are relatively affluent. This is not the real word for a lot of people.
But also, what I would say, Nana, and this is maybe getting into slightly technical stuff, is that there are lots of books, highly recommend Watermelons by James Delling-Pole, about the green movement being green on the outside, red on the inside, all to do with socialism and controlling people. There's also a wonderful book called The Hockey Stick, which is all about IPCC. All the figures that were given were to support the global warming ideology. And actually, if you look on the other side, there's plenty of evidence to suggest that it's not as serious as people say.
Sure, and I agree with you largely. When was Greta elected?
She wasn't elected.
Right. When has she ever stood for election?
No, but she hasn't.
And does Greta represent all young people? See, I don't think she does. I don't think she represents the people on the schemes who
Glasgow.
Rather
that's the
talked
point
about
that we're
earlier.
making.
She doesn't represent my children.
She's fairly affluent, so that's already. So she's not really facing some of the real problems that people who are in poverty face.
Absolutely,
in particular in places
she
like
wasn't
Glasgow.
even invited.
Have
Why
to
do we
on,
give
John,
her
but
so
we'll come
much
back
publicity?
To that. Well, we'll come back to that. We'll
not
not give her any more. Let's not give her any more. Let's stop talking about her. Because after the break, it's time for our great British debate. Don't be so awful, Tom. I'm asking, should the UK introduce a blanket ban on e-scooters? This week, tube passengers had to be evacuated after an e-scooter battery exploded on the train. But it's not just exploding batteries. Almost 500 people were injured by riders on e-scooters in the UK last year. So is it time to put them away for good? We'll get our teeth stuck into that one next, but this show is nothing without you, so I want to hear your thoughts on every subject that we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or why not tweet us at gbnews. And there's currently a poll. We're asking, should the UK introduce a blanket ban on e-scooters? Please cast your vote now. We'll be back in a moment.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, where have you been? It's time for the Great British Debate. This hour, I'm asking, should the UK introduce a blanket ban on e-scooters? This week, tube passengers had to be evacuated from Parsons Green Station after an e-scooter exploded on the train. Passengers were forced to flee after the scooter's lithium-ion battery caught fire. But the issues don't stop at the technical difficulties. Government figures show almost 500 people were injured by e-scooter crashes in the UK last year alone. So should we ditch them altogether or roll them out on tighter regulation? I'm joined by the former roads policing officer Mike Rawson and also Michael Quintana from Ridables, a group supporting electric micro-mobility. All right, so first I'm going to start with Michael. I know this could get confusing. But Michael, what are the current rules?
I can go, Mike.
Okay, well, so what are the current rules that regard the e-scooters?
Well, good afternoon, Nana. I think, first of all, there's a great deal of confusion out there amongst the public. The law is quite clear. You can only legally use a scooter that's been hired under a government scheme. So if you own one, you cannot use it on the public road. It is entirely restricted to private land. So many of the scooters that I've seen around are certainly not those hired under the scheme. So this confusion certainly needs to be cleared up.
Basically, because what happened at Parsons Green, as I understand it, they threw the e-scooter out, but the owner didn't come forward. Potentially maybe because they didn't have any regulation for this thing, because there are regulations, as you said. I'm going to bring in, now I'm presuming that was Mike that I spoke to there, yeah? I'm going to bring in Michael.
Yes. I'll be Mike for today.
No, you can't be, because it's not like that on my notes. That'll confuse me even more. Right, you have to be Michael. Right.
That's good. We'll do that one.
So, Michael, talk to me then about your business and also about these e-scooters, because a lot of people are saying that they are simply unsafe. Where are you coming from it at?
Yeah. So, like a lot of industries, right now we're dealing with people who are bringing in devices. They're being bought from all over the world, because that's kind of the only place where we can get them. Or they're being shipped in from different countries with different levels of safety standards. So we at Rideables.org, we're looking to promote the safe legality of micromobility. We'll start with electric scooters, but the whole idea is that we want to promote the safe usage of the devices. So, things like not riding on pavements, things like not modifying, things where they should be modified, wearing a helmet, all these kind of things. Now, in terms of the issue at Parsons Green, one of the things that we don't know is what that person did to their device. Some people do modify these, which they shouldn't, and that's a whole other issue. It's the same with other devices too, like mobile phones and a lot of things with the lithium-ion battery. The minute you start modifying them, look at some of the devices like the Samsung.
Michael, let me give you another example then, because you said that you don't know what that person had done to the scooter. There was one that was handed into a lost property and then just caught fire. So it had been left somewhere, handed to lost property. Again, maybe that, it's probably unlikely the person modified it. It just caught fire. And we know that batteries do sometimes just catch fire.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the benefits that we look at with the possibility of legalization is that this industry can be regulated here at home, here in the UK at home, where we do have certain safety standards and, a certain level of engineering safety standards that we can apply to these devices. So at that point, we'll be looking at an industry where we can, once it's legalized, you can start investing time, you can start investing resources into making this a safe, viable means of, or a safer viable means of transport. Now, with these devices that are, that have exploded, you have to look at the grander numbers, right? You have to look at, out of hundreds of thousands of users, maybe even more, we're looking at a few devices that you can count on your hand. So a blanket ban because of these issues isn't the answer. Obviously, these things do happen. We do want to find out why these things happen. But I wouldn't say let's ban everything just because we've had an accident, or else we might as well ban cars and everything else.
You also mentioned about, that they shouldn't be used on pavements and things. There doesn't seem to be any way you can use them. I'm going to come back to Mike. So what would you suggest with these things then? Because they are, I've had an incident where somebody almost knocked me off the pavement, but they thought that they had got away with it, but they didn't, because I chased them. I will talk about the details later, but it didn't end nicely for them. I was gentle with them, to be fair. But the point of this is that what is the point of them, really? Because there's you can't regulate it. How are you going to regulate them?
Well, that's a problem. But let me just comment on that one that caught fire. It happened to be at Parsons Green, which is a station that's outside. Just imagine if it had happened on the deep tube, full of people. At the very least, there would have been a panic. People would have pulled the emergency cord. Train may well have stopped in the tunnel. The mind boggles. So they must immediately be banned by the transport authorities, so there's no risk of this happening. Now, in answer to your other question, the legislation, whatever legislation there is, must be enforced. That's the job of the police. Now, we don't see many police officers on the streets or on the pavements. There's not enough of them. They're so busy responding to 999 calls that the patrolling police officer who can do something about this problem, he or she don't exist. So it's not self-enforcing legislation. And from my observations, there are too many idiots on these things. If they were all ridden safely and sensibly, not on the footway, but on the side of the road, not weaving in and out, not jumping traffic lights, then I'd say, yes, I think we can adapt and live with them. But sadly, the reality is they're being written by some stupid people. And if you are an elderly person and you get hit by one of these things, the shock alone may well sadly kill you. And so the answers are not simple, Nana.
I don't think they are as well. Listen, Mike Rawson, thank you for that. He's a former roads policing officer, and also Michael Quintana, the Director of Communications and Government Policy, Ryder Bulls. Now, a TfL spokesperson said this: "We completely understand how worrying it was for our customers and staff when an e-scooter caught a light on a train. It is forbidden to ride e-scooters at stations or on trains, and a failure to comply with this by law is a criminal offence. E-scooters may currently be carried but must be folded for the entirety of the journey." Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Those e-scooters, they're a bit of a nightmare. I don't fancy one. I think they look dangerous. The batteries, combustible, of course, batteries are. But after the break, we'll continue our e-scooter discussion with former Liberal Democrat MP and former Transport Minister Norman Baker. It'll also be time for your say on the issue as well. I'm asking, should the UK introduce a blanket ban on these e-scooters? Send that email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Also, you can tweet me at gbnews. But it's first time to pick up your latest news headlines.
Hello, I'm Karen Roberts. Here are the latest headlines. Thousands of young activists are marching through Glasgow demanding action on climate change. The protest, organised by the school strike movement Fridays for Future, is being staged during the COP26 conference. Environmental campaigner Greta Thunberg and other global youth activists are due to speak later. The European Commission Vice President says he's disappointed by the UK's efforts to reach an agreement on the Northern Ireland Protocol. Marcos Sefcovic claims after a third round of talks with Britain's Brexit Minister Lord Frost, they're no closer to an agreement. The two men will meet for continued talks in London next week. Yorkshire County Cricket Club has announced the appointment of Lord Patel as its new chairman and director. It follows the resignation of Roger Hutton, who quit in the wake of Azim Rafiq's racism allegations against the club. Two other board members have also resigned. A fifth teenager has been found guilty of killing 15-year-old Keon Lincoln, who was shot and stabbed outside his home in Birmingham in January. Kieran Donaldson has been convicted, having been accused of supplying weapons for the attack. The Education Secretary, Nadim Zahawi, has admitted the government made a mistake when it combined a vote on disciplinary procedures with a Tory MP's suspension. Former Cabinet Minister Owen Paterson has now officially resigned. He faced a 30-day ban for breaching lobbying rules, but a Conservative vote blocked the recommendation before making a U-turn. Work is underway now to clear the tracks in Salisbury 5 days after two trains collided. Cranes have been brought in to remove the damaged carriages. The two trains crashed in Salisbury's Fisherton Tunnel on Sunday night. South Western Railway says journey cancellations and delays will continue for the next 10 days. Well, I'll be back at the top of the hour with a full news update.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good afternoon. So we are back to the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should the UK introduce a blanket ban on e-scooters? You can see here the images of an e-scooter bursting into flames at the tube station in London. That was this week. But it's not just electrical fires, because almost 500 people have been injured by them this year. So that is still quite a lot in just such a short space of time. In a moment, we're going to hear my thoughts of the panel. But it's time for your say as well. But first, let's find out the thoughts of former Liberal Democrat MP and former Transport Minister Norman Baker. Norman, welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
Now, I want to ask you, the current rules say that you can't ride an e-scooter on a public road unless it's from one of the hire stations. Do you think that that is a sufficient law, or do you think it's outdated? What are your thoughts?
No, I'm afraid the government's completely mishandled this, because we've now got a situation where people see other people on e-scooters, they think it's legal, and they just get hold of one from wherever it happens to be. There's no regulation on the type of scooter it is, and off they go without any training, without any licence, with a scooter that may be able to perform at a much higher speed than is proper for the road network. So I'm afraid this business of trying trial areas has sent entirely the wrong message. So we don't have to ban them all. We don't have to have a free-for-all. There's a sensible middle course. The sooner the government gets it, the better, which is proper regulation to make sure that these are not on pavements, to make sure there's a speed, maximum speed for these scooters, perhaps to make sure that people wear helmets. That's another debate, and to make sure that they may be banned in particular locations where they are particularly dangerous. Now, all those things can happen, and the sooner the government brings that through, the better. There may also be an argument for saying whether or not people need to have a licence for them. We don't for e-bikes, so there's a debate about that. But we need proper regulation, and people at the moment feel they can just get on it like they get on a bike, and clearly they're much more dangerous than bikes.
You said not on pavements, though. If they're not going to be on pavement, where would they use them?
Well, on the road, clearly. I mean, that's where bikes are, and that's where motorbikes are.
So you would have these scooters on the roads. So what about what about insurance? Because if you're on the road, you're causing.
Yes, there's an argument. I mean, there's a debate to be had as to whether or not they're treated like bicycles or whether they're treated like motorbikes, because they are a kind of halfway house. I mean, look, there is a positive benefit to these machines in one way, which is that they encourage people to leave their cars at home, and they ease congestion in township centres, and they are quite flexible. So I think if we can make them work in a safe way, that's the best outcome. But they need to be tightly regulated in a way they're not at the moment. Insurance may be necessary, yes.
Of course, but I'm sure insurance would have to be necessary, because, for example, if they knocked me off, it'd be tough, because I'm quite hardcore. But if somebody knocked me over and I was unable to perform my duties at work and things like that, then who would pay for my support, and where would I get some compensation?
Well, the same question applies to bicycles, of course, because people don't have insurance for bicycles.
Well, I think
so that situation has existed for 100 years or more. It's also the case that there's no insurance for mobility scooters. So people who are disabled with mobility scooters, which also have a power to them and can go quite fast, and again, people aren't trained to drive those, can also be dangerous to knock people over, and they're also on pavements. So there's a whole range of machines which are out there, which are dealt with in different ways. And what we have to try and do is to not stop people using machines which they find convenient, but at the same time protect the general public from any downsides.
Well, listen, Norman, thank you so much for your insight on that. That's Norman Baker, former MP and former Transport Minister. Thank you so much. Right, let's ask my panel, Abby and John. What do you think? I'll go with you, John, first.
Well, I think it's quite straightforward, isn't it? There's this anomaly between the ones that you hire and not being able to buy, and buying them. Clear that up overnight. 2, license them. 3, regulate them. 4, tell them you've got to wear a helmet. Whilst we're at it, let's also get cyclists to be registered and insured. And don't give me this argument they always give, which is, oh, I'm a car owner as well. Well, if you're a car owner, you have to have insurance for both cars if you've got 2 cars. So that would give protection. Because banning them, you can't ban them. You've let the genie out of the bottle. And as per usual, the government, and I got a lot...
You could ban them on, say, public spaces. So if you did ban them, then if anyone's on an e-scooter on a pavement or on a road, then they're doing something illegal.
There aren't any coppers. It'll never happen now.
Well,
You can make up laws like that, and it all sounds great. Best to regulate them. Best also to say, look, it's here, and Norman's right, it clears congestion.
Well,
so why are we against it?
There are cameras. Well, because I think they're quite dangerous. Abby,
I mean, I've been not with an electric one, but like just you know when you see, I don't mind kids, little kids kind of on them, but I tell you what really annoys me is adults. On the things, like literally, it's like, oh, for heaven's sake, look at yourself in the mirror. But also, while we're on the subject, because I'm sure this is all to do with, let's get rid of cars and go green.
Yes, it is.
Where do these people think the lithium batteries come from? Again, are they little elves going, oh, look, there's a lithium battery? No, they're dug out, mined in Africa by very, very poor Africans. Slavery. So that's how they...
Not necessarily. I mean, there must be some good...
But I mean, this is... must be a good... There must be a good slavery somewhere.
Well, there might be a good mine somewhere where they do it properly and everything. But the point is they're still pillaging the earth of all some
things. So it's just hypocritical, I think.
If it relieves congestion, it's very much a London problem, this as well, if you don't mind me saying.
Do you think?
Yeah, I've counted 1 or 2.
I don't think so. I think...
No, I'm afraid I live outside of London. It's not much of a problem elsewhere. It's mostly in London. But the way to deal with it is to clear up that anomaly, regulate it, and then, if they're all licensed, your question about, well, there's cameras to pick them up, then we'd be able to track them down. You can't track them down if they're not logged and licensed.
And also they're so agile, aren't they? They can move quickly. Now, listen, I'll tell you what happened to me. I was, there's an alleyway. I was coming out of the alleyway, and suddenly this thing just literally, if I had been 2 seconds earlier, that thing would have mowed me down.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so he went past, and then he went down to the little corner shop. And he didn't realise, but I caught him up at the corner shop. And I said, I'm a single mum. What would my kids do without me? You could have killed me. And I said to him, you need a licence for that thing. And he was looking at me, and I wear a hat and glasses. I said, don't you look at me like that. Blah, blah, blah. I was like an old witch.
But Norman was really right though. When he said you could look around for a copper, for a policeman on the beat. They won't be, because they're checking your tweets and making sure you're using the right pronouns.
They're not even doing that.
Yeah, but I mean,
they're not even doing that, Abby.
Yeah, but they're checking what pronouns you're using. Seriously.
Don't forget, Theresa May cut 20,000 coppers. They haven't yet been replaced. I think 10,000 have. But they have got their priorities wrong as well. I'd agree
completely wrong
with you. But what we need to do is deal with this problem. And the answer is regulation. I'm not really that keen, but why should you be able to go on an electric vehicle, but you can't do that with a motorbike? Why should you be able to jump the lights? That's a real London problem. People, cyclists in London are the most irresponsible
cyclists, I think, per se.
That's a little bit unfair, because there are some good cyclists, and I reckon a lot of them would say that actually those cyclists give them a bad name. So it's not really fair to put
hold on a minute. When they put cycle lanes
but as you
London,
said, you feel it's a London problem, but we're looking at e-scooters on sort of like a wider range. So, and I think if you went other places, they would actually be building a problem, especially places like Newcastle, I suspect.
Sure.
But actually, if there's viewers out there, we'd love to hear your thoughts, actually. Are e-scooters a problem where you are? I mean, what
But also, we've put in all these cycle lanes, and then the cycle lobbying groups, one man, not you personally, but GBNews has on an awful lot, the Irish fella, the facts are they're not using the cycle lanes.
No, they're always empty.
They don't want to use them. They're always empty.
Well, I want to hear from Abby. What are your...
I think that we need to have a look at cycle. If we're going to talk about like the two-wheel thing, we do need to look at taxation, registration, number plate. Because if you're riding a bicycle, you're more likely to cause an accident with a car. If you swerve out on your bicycle and the driver can't see you, you're going to cause a terrible accident. But then they can't trace you. So we need to really look at legislation.
Some sort of number plate recognition, something where we can find out whose scooter it is and that kind of thing. Well, today we're asking, should the UK introduce a blanket ban on e-scooters? You've heard what my guests and panel think. Now it's your time to say what you think, and a lot of you have been doing just that. Brittany says, no, they are good if used safely. They should be used the same way as a bike. Steve says they most certainly should not be on the pavement. If they're used on the road, you should have to wear a crash helmet and a vehicle licence, MOT'd and insured like any other electrically powered vehicle. CAT says, yes, impose a blanket ban, then throw the lot of them in a builder's skip so that they can never blight our roads and pavements again. Ash says no. They aid mobility around the towns and cities and need to be used sensibly. Philip says, thought we wanted to go all electric, now we want to ban it. And there's a poll up at the moment on Twitter, and we're asking the very question whether you think they should be banned, and currently 65% of you say yes, we should introduce a blanket ban on them. But it's still early days, so head over to the Twitter poll now and cast your vote. Still to come, scientists at Oxford University have found people with specific DNA could be more at risk from coronavirus. Yes, you heard it here. The gene has links to our heritage. We'll discuss that with friend of the show, Dr. Catherine Millington-Sanders. But first, it's time to check out the weather.
Hello again. A lot more cloud across the UK today compared to yesterday, but actually many places still dry and bright. It is a little milder compared to recent days. It will turn even milder again this weekend, but also windier as this low approaches. Ahead of the low, this warm front bringing additional cloud cover across the UK. But generally, well, most places are dry and bright. And as we end the day, decent enough weather for bonfire night with clear spells in the east, cloud elsewhere, any rain confined to northwestern hills and coasts. But it will turn increasingly wet for western Scotland in particular by the end of the night. With thicker cloud and a bit more of a breeze overnight, temperatures will hold up. A frost-free night for all of us, but a cloudy start to the day, and in northern and western Scotland, an increasingly wet start to the day. That wet and increasingly windy weather sweeps its way across the rest of Scotland, Northern Ireland, into northern England by lunchtime, as well as Wales. Coastal gales accompanying the rain, and the rain heavy over western hills. But it's replaced by sunshine and showers in Scotland and Northern Ireland, and ahead of it, some dry weather and also a mild day for all of us, 12 to 14 Celsius. The rain eases as it pushes south across southern parts of the UK on Saturday evening, clears away by midnight, and then clear spells, but increasingly windy across the UK, particularly in the north, and for northern Scotland, risk of gales or severe gales combined with high seas could be some significant coastal impacts. Showery rain continues for Scotland, but elsewhere it dries up through the night with some clear spells or some sunshine as we begin Sunday. Still, though, a windy day to come, especially over the higher ground of northern England and Scotland, and to the east of higher ground. Could be some transport disruption because of those gusty winds. But for most, Sunday's looking drier than Saturday with some brightness, and it stays changeable next week.
Hi, I'm Alistair Stewart, and I really hope that you can join me here on GB News. I've been in this game for 40 years and I've made lots of friends. I try and reflect what they think about the big stories of the day in conversation with me. That's why we call it Alistair Stewart and Friends. And you're a key part of it as well. I always get inundated with emails and messages and texts. And if they're really good, I play them back to you. 12 till 3 every Saturday and Sunday.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk. Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
So good afternoon. Now, this is an incredible story, and it's something that they've discovered. Scientists at Oxford University have pinpointed a chunk of DNA that blocks lung cells from fighting off coronavirus. Now, the gene doubles the risk of death from the virus. Researchers say that it could explain why South Asian people in the UK have been hard hit by the pandemic. Let's discuss this with friend of the show, GP Dr. Catherine Millington-Sanders. Catherine, welcome to the programme. Great to have you on. Now, this is fascinating, this study. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
It really is incredible. And some of the researchers, we really literally owe our lives to all the incredible work that they're doing around the world to try and get advancements for us to help solve the problem of COVID for us. So we know already millions of people have died of COVID globally already, over 9.2 million cases in the UK, with over 140,000 deaths in the UK. So what is especially difficult about this virus has been that we don't actually know exactly why it affects some people more than others. So factors associated that we know already of increased risk includes things like our age, our ethnicity, being male gender, obesity, diabetes, and having high blood pressure. And we also will remember a lot in previous news reports that people of black ethnicity are nearly twice as likely to die of coronavirus than white people. And that's also similar for people of Bangladeshi, Pakistani, Indian and mixed ethnicities. So what's really important here with this research, and why funding research is absolutely critical, is Oxford has found and pinpointed this chunk of DNA which blocks the lung cells from actually fighting off the virus. And this is crucial because this specific gene, as you mentioned, doubles the risk of COVID deaths. What they found is more than 61% of people of South Asian heritage were most likely to have this specific COVID gene, and 15% of Europeans, and only 2.4% of African and 1.8% of East African origin.
So can I just say, Catherine, so that would suggest that, do you remember near the beginning of the pandemic where they thought that people of colour were more likely, especially the Africans, were more likely to be the ones who would be more susceptible to COVID? It actually turns out that they're the least likely to have the gene that would make them more likely to die of the disease, which obviously would suggest there are other factors that play a very important role in that. Wasn't that the case?
So that's the critical part to remember. We have to remember that more people of colour have died of COVID and are more at risk. But this specifically shows that they are much, much less likely of African origin to have the specific gene. So the main part to take away is, and what's important to have found this gene, is that we can actually now do things to basically find the gene, find the things that will be able to treat people with the gene much more effectively. So imagine we've got our vaccines now, but actually we'll be starting to look at research potentially for medications and treatments that can specifically target people with more at-risk genetics. This is one gene. There are likely to be many other genes that also give people a higher risk that I'm sure researchers are working on as we speak. So this becomes more exciting. We've got more new treatments being researched on. Most recently we've had our oral tablet that's due to treat COVID that's just come out in the news. And hopefully in a year's time, when we look back on this, we'll be able to see even more treatment options that are available because of the research that's pioneering this.
It is incredible, though I will just slightly pull you up on something, because I think in actual fact, overall, actually more people who are white died of COVID, not than black, but percentage-wise is what you mean by that, I'm assuming.
88% of white, yeah.
So with this research, we've got all these great treatments now. Do we feel that we're getting closer to COVID being a disease that we can actually quite effectively manage?
I think researchers are like stealth missiles on this. We've got people looking at genetics, we've got people looking at the vaccinations, we've got people looking at treatments. And across the board, they are trying to track every single intervention in my academic medical world, looking and reading all the things that are coming out and all the early research. It's incredible. I mean, it's really exciting and groundbreaking. And not only it looks like that these things will be helping the development advancement of treating COVID, and absolutely there are more and more advances that we're seeing regularly and hearing about in the news, but also hopefully it will give more research that will be able to look at genetics for other things like cancer, dementia, diabetes. So the hope is, with all the funding that's going into research, that we'll not only be able to sort of get to treat COVID effectively, but also learn about lots of other conditions that we've been trying to treat for a long time.
Well, let's hope they carry on with this kind of research. And it would be great if they start doing more of this with other things, other conditions as well. For example, dementia and things like that, where they could probably find solutions much more quickly. Dr. Catherine Milligan-Saunders, thank you so much for joining us. Wow, so very exciting development, actually, don't you think, guys? A very exciting development that actually turns out that people of colour who are black are less likely to have the gene that actually causes COVID, not the other way around.
Yeah, one thing I did, I lent it to John and he rolled his eyes, was when she said 140,000 deaths in this country. Deaths off 28 days after a positive test. So you could die of anything. But if there was a COVID test, it doesn't mean you've died of COVID-19.
It could be just with COVID.
Well, you could have cancer and you could have tested 28 days before, but you're going to die of cancer. These figures are all really skewed, and it annoys me.
Still large numbers, though.
For goodness sake, let's just
today... A lot less.
Let's today focus on a great bit of good news.
It is good news, yeah.
British research, American research, they're getting somewhere. And I think for black and ethnic people, this is very important because proportionally, they're the people who've died the most.
No.
Proportionally,
but it's more to do with the kind of jobs that.
Yeah, and the job. I was going on to say.
But that's only that. But actually, it's good to know. Yes. The reality of it is that there's a genetic element
in the South Asian community.
But it will actually know. So in the European, it's 15 times more. I think South Asians, it's 61%.
61, yeah.
For black, it's 2.5. So it's interesting that actually what we thought is, I always thought that the statistics where they said, people of colour are more likely to get this and everything. I always thought, well, if you're in the face of the virus, then you're way more likely. So it depends how more likely you are to be in the face of the virus.
And that's what's very interesting, isn't it? Because it's very interesting to look at that, because we know in the NHS a lot of those people who work in those front-facing jobs are of colour.
Well, that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, you see, it's exciting stuff here on GB News. More to come in the next hour. Whatever you do, do not go anywhere. Keep it locked with us, because we've got so much still to come. And keep putting your votes on our poll. Good afternoon, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. For the next hour, me and my panel, we're taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines. As ever, the show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me, it's writer and commentator John Gaunt, and also comedian Abby Roberts. Still to come, each Friday at 5, we put someone or something in the spotlight with subject or matter that we feature in my Friday Focus. And this week, I'm going to be joined by husband of British-Iranian aid worker Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe. She's been detained in Iran since 2016. He's into his second week of hunger strike outside the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office in London. He's calling on the government to do more to bring his wife home. And there's been another record when it comes to the number of migrants crossing the English Channel to the UK in a single day. We'll get the latest from our Home Affairs and Security correspondent, Mark White. And, of course, we want to hear from you. You can send me an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet to me @gbnews. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Hello, I'm Karen Roberts. This is your news at 5 o'clock. Young activists are marching through the centre of Glasgow, demanding action from leaders and politicians as COP26 climate talks continue. The protest has been organised by the school strike movement Fridays for Future. Environmental campaigner Greta Thunberg labelled COP26 a failure, saying that the summit is a 2-week celebration of business as usual.
The COP has turned into a PR event where leaders are giving beautiful speeches and announcing fancy commitments and targets, while behind the curtains, the governments of the global north countries are still refusing to take any drastic climate action.
Lord Patel has been appointed the new chair of Yorkshire County Cricket Club following Roger Hutton's resignation. It's after former player Azim Rafiq accused the club of institutional racism. The club has been banned from hosting international and major matches for its handling of the claims. 2 other board members have also resigned. The chief executive of the ECB, Tom Harrison, confirmed the incident is being taken very seriously.
Strong action is being taken in response to this, where trust has been breached, where there is a fault line, where there are problems. And what we are the message we're sending out is we are taking action and we will listen.
Labour and the Lib Dems have confirmed they will fight in the upcoming North Shropshire by-election after Tory MP Owen Paterson resigned over a lobbying scandal. Mr Paterson faced a 30-day ban for breaching lobbying rules, but a Conservative vote blocked the recommendation before a U-turn was made. The Education Secretary, Nadeem Zahawi, has admitted the government made a mistake when it combined a vote on disciplinary procedures with a Tory MP's suspension.
Conflating that with a specific case of Owen Paterson was a mistake. I think to reflect within 24 hours and by the morning have the leader of the House, and I take collective responsibility for this, by the way, to come forward and say, look, we made a mistake to conflate the two, the really important one to get right, and we need cross-party negotiation on this, and I urge all my fellow parliamentarians from whichever party to shed their politics. Let's not play tit for tat. Let's get this right for generations, and actually for your viewers, for the country, to have confidence in the system of scrutiny of MPs.
The European Commission Vice President says that he's disappointed by the UK's efforts to reach an agreement on the Northern Ireland Protocol. Maros Sefcovic announced EU proposals that would create an express lane for goods through simplified certification and reduced checks. But he claims after a third round of talks with Britain's Brexit Minister Lord Frost, they are no closer to an agreement. The 2 men will meet for continued talks in London next week.
We have seen no move at all from the UK side. I find this disappointing, and once again, I urge the UK government to engage with us sincerely. Our aim should be to establish stability and predictability for Northern Ireland. We hear a lot about Article 16 at the moment. Let there be no doubt that triggering Article 16 to seek the renegotiation of the protocol would have serious consequences.
Reports of sexual harassment and sexual offences to British Transport Police have risen by 63% since before the pandemic. Over 400 reports have been made between April and October this year. That's up from 250 in the same period in 2019. The force says the increase is evidence that more people understand that this behaviour is unacceptable. Meanwhile, the number of officers who are specially trained to investigate sexual offences has almost tripled. A 5th teenager has been found guilty of killing 15-year-old Keon Lincoln, who was shot and stabbed outside his home in Birmingham. Kieran Donaldson has been convicted of manslaughter, having been accused of helping and supplying weapons for the attack. Yesterday, 4 teenagers, including a 14-year-old gunman, were convicted of the schoolboy's murder. Work is underway to clear train tracks in Salisbury 5 days after 2 trains collided. Cranes were brought in to remove the damaged carriages. The 2 trains crashed in Salisbury's Fisherton Tunnel on Sunday night. South Western Railway says journey cancellations and delays will continue for the next 10 days. A life-sized cake of Sir David Attenborough has been unveiled at the Cake International Show in Birmingham. Artists across the UK collaborated on the creation to mark the naturalist and broadcaster's 95th birthday earlier this year. The cake features Sir David surrounded by his favourite things such as animals, plants, butterflies and even a giraffe. I'll bring you the latest headlines in half an hour's time. Until then, it's back to Nana Akua.
Good afternoon. Now, the husband of detained British Iranian aid worker Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe has vowed to continue his hunger strike outside the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office as he calls on the government to do more to bring his wife home to the UK. Richard Ratcliffe is now into his 13th day, saying ministers keep being too timid in their efforts. Richard joins me now from outside the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, where he spent the last week. Richard, thank you so much for talking to us. Now, I want to ask you, why in your mind do you think that the Iranian government are holding your wife?
Thank you for having me on. Good evening. Yes, so as you say, we're here on hunger strike in front of the British Foreign Office, day 13, and it is to protest at the government's approach. It is in part because they're not responding to the demands of Iran. Iran has been very clear for more than 5 years that Nazanin is held over some unpaid money that the UK owes Iran. That should have been sorted out long before we were ever involved. But now you've got Nazanin and other British hostages being held. It really is time that the government steps up and resolves the problem.
Now, I know that you've spoken to Liz Truss and you're trying to get meetings and trying to get people to do something about it because it feels like there doesn't seem to be an appetite to continue with this. The pressure doesn't seem to be there now. What do you want to happen now so that we can move forward with this?
So you're right, as you say, I had a meeting last week with Liz Truss, with also my MP Tulip Sadiq and our family and lawyers. And, you know, she was very warm and supportive, but didn't really have any solutions about, well, the two parts to our complaint. One is that the UK is far too weak on Iran's hostage taking and is not willing to challenge Iran for using people in this way. And second, that she wasn't willing to explain what the problem was with the debt and why it wasn't moving. So we said to her, listen, if you carry on this path, Nazanin will be put back in prison. Iran has threatened to do so in the coming weeks. So we're still camping here in the hopes that the government will rethink, will reflect on the fact that it's not working, and will perhaps change its approach.
You've been out there for 13 days so far. We know that if you do more than 15 days, you could do yourself irreversible damage. Totally understand why you really feel you need to protest in this way, and I'm 100% behind you in a sense. But what do you do if they still haven't done anything by day 15?
Well, you're right. I mean, a hunger strike is a short-term tactic. British government, other governments tend to not respond to hunger strikes during them. So we will see what happens. We will see if we get another meeting with Liz Truss and so on. And maybe we don't. I'm not planning on continuing this to the point where I end up in hospital and in a coma. I'm planning on making the point clear that the government needs to take responsibility. The first job of government is to protect its citizens. I don't think we've quite got there yet. It felt, if I'm honest, the last meeting was a bit complacent. But you're right, I've got doctors looking at me, family worried about me, like anyone would be in this case. So we take it one day at a time.
Nazanin's so fortunate that she's got such a wonderful man sort of looking out for her. I'm wondering, how are you coping with all of this? Because, we see you there with all your energy pushing to try and get your wife home, but it must be very difficult for you as well.
Yeah, I have to say I'm not feeling like I've got too much energy at this point. As you see, I'm wrapped up with like 9 coats on and a blanket on top of me. I think my job is to keep going for her. Sometimes it's to try and be hopeful and tell her it'll all be okay. Sometimes it's hard to feel that, and we all have our ups and downs. and there's a huge network of support behind me in terms of family, but also actually being here. Lots of lovely people have come down from all walks of life, from the high to ordinary people, and that just knowing that people care and follow our story and have been sharing it and just wanted to say, listen, good luck, and we're thinking of you. Really important to keep it going, but also really important for recovery afterwards. So I'm really grateful for everyone that has.
So what would you like to see then in terms of a timescale? If you could plot what you want the government to do, what would that timescale be, and what should they do?
It's a really good question. I think first, the reason we came on hunger strike was because Nazanin was threatened with imminent imprisonment. So I came out here as an escalation to stop that happening. I don't think while we're here it will happen. But yeah, I guess we're looking for the government to make it really clear to Iran that there are consequences for escalating it the way they have. And obviously to behind closed doors settling it for us and the other families. The government's not going to explain to me exactly what it's doing because that's the nature of diplomacy. But after 5.5 years, I've got every right to be very sceptical that what they're doing is working.
Yeah, and it's extremely irritating as well because the Vice President for Iran is being welcomed at COP26. I mean, that's not great. He's out there, yet your wife is still imprisoned and nothing feels like it's moving forward.
No, that's right. It's the next week. There's an Iranian delegation being wined and dined up in Glasgow, coming over and acting like this is a normal state that can do normal diplomacy. I think it's important that the government, the Foreign Office, makes it abundantly clear that it is unacceptable to take British citizens hostage, and I don't feel they're nearly strong enough in doing that. So there's a chance next week. There's a chance to discuss solving Nazanin's case. In fact, there are big, complicated nuclear negotiations coming along in a few weeks' time. Another chance. So hopefully, I won't keep coming on the airwaves on your show complaining about the government, and we'll be able to sort of be all happy and smiles. But at the moment, I'm not too hopeful.
That would be wonderful if we could get Nazanin out. Have you spoken to her recently?
I spoke to her today. She's obviously, generally anxious because that's what the Iranian system does to you. It puts you in a sort of perpetual anxiety. Right now, she's probably most anxious about her husband and his harebrained scheme, camping on the street in the cold and on hunger strike. So I just was reassuring her that, listen, I'm okay, still able to walk around, still feeling strong enough, and I promise you I'm being careful. And yeah, I think she's obviously worried for the future, but hopefully the government will take up the chalice and bring her home.
And you said you've had a lot of warmth from people as well. How's your daughter coping with this, with her mother not being around like that?
So with her mum not being around, it's tough, and at points she clearly laments Nazanin not being here, and it is tough, and certainly all the other kids get picked up by their mums at school gates, and she just gets her dad. This hunger strike's obviously been strange for her. We were very apprehensive at the beginning, and there is a responsibility as a parent not to take it too far. She's been down a few times to the camp, so she's been part of, we did some pumpkin carving and we did some stone painting, been part of the creative stuff. And I think that's made it, safe enough that she's part of the protest, but also protected from its darker side. All parents try to protect their kids. In our situation, it's a hard one to do.
And I wanted to ask, because there was a time during COVID where Nazanin was under house arrest. Is she still under house arrest, or have they actually taken her to jail? Is she still with her family at home, or?
No, you're exactly right. She's formally at home. She's awaiting. So she's been given the sentence. She's awaiting the phone call to come back to prison. That phone call hasn't come, so she's in legal limbo technically.
And while she was there, have you been able to actually see her, actually go and see her physically and actually talk to her, or has everything been communication via phone and online, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so that's right. So it's you can't get a visa to go to Iran. They wouldn't give me one. These days, now she's out of prison, I can at least see her on a Skype call. I can see her face, and that's much better than when she was in prison, where it would just be a 3-minute phone call, and then often be someone standing next to her. A very different kind of experience.
Well, Richard, listen, I wish you all the best with this, and I'm behind you 100%. I think what you're doing, Nazanin's very lucky to have a fantastic man like you behind her and supporting her, and she's a very strong woman, and I have a good feeling that this should hopefully end well for you and that she'll be out soon. Thank you so much for talking to us. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. You take care of yourself. So that was Richard Ratcliffe. He's the husband of Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, who's talking to us live from outside the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. And a spokesperson from there said this: Iran's decision to proceed with these baseless charges against Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe is an appalling continuation of the cruel ordeal that she is going through. Instead of threatening to return Nazanin to prison, Iran must release her permanently so she can return home. We're doing all we can to help Nazanin get home to her young daughter and family, and we'll continue to press Iran on this point. Well, coming up, we'll get the latest from our Home Affairs and Security correspondent, Mark White, as a record number of migrants have crossed the English Channel. We'll discuss that next, but first, it's your weather forecast.
Hello again. A lot more cloud across the UK today compared to yesterday, but actually many places still dry and bright. It is a little milder compared to recent days. It will turn even milder again this weekend, but also windier as this low approaches. Ahead of the low, this warm front bringing additional cloud cover across the UK, but generally...
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 5:20. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Now, there's been a record number of migrants crossing the Channel, and there's been a record number of migrants crossing the Channel, and it's been quite a serious thing here at GB News. And we've been looking into it very closely, and joining me today is our Home Affairs correspondent, Mark White, who's going to discuss exactly what was going on.
Well, a very significant development with confirmation today from the Home Office, actually 2 days after the fact. We were reporting this on Wednesday evening about a very significant number of those intercepted on small boats on the British side of the Channel on Wednesday. We had said over 800. now confirmation from the Home Office that that number is 853 in a single day. That beats the record for a single day in terms of the number of migrants pulled off small boats in the English Channel. While this was happening on our side of the Channel, on the French side of the Channel, it was absolutely chaotic. There were 25 small boat incidents on our side of the Channel. On the French side of the Channel, another 20 incidents with 779 migrants that had to be rescued because effectively they were setting off from shore, but the conditions on Wednesday were not ideal at all. We're in winter, of course.
It's freezing, yeah.
And although it may look relatively calm, it's never calm in the Channel. There are currents, there are winds out there, there's a wake from all of the passing vessels. And vessels, these small boats were getting into trouble. There was one incident off Dunkirk where a boat was capsized, people clinging to the upturned boat, 40 people in the water, most of them not wearing life jackets. One person died. They were rescued unconscious. They were not able to revive them by the time they got back into Dunkirk. Another migrant was reported missing. They haven't found them, presumed dead. Then yesterday, again, another boat that was found this time on the shore at Wissant, which is about 5-6 miles from Calais, on the beach there near an upturned boat that was had been full of water. There were 3 migrants found. 1 was dead, 2 were suffering from extreme hypothermia. And then again, last night, a train struck a group of migrants from Eritrea who were on the tracks. 50 migrants walking up the tracks between Dunkirk and Calais. When this train came through in appalling weather, it was rain, poor visibility. That train struck a group of the migrants. 1 died, 3 were seriously injured. Local politicians are talking about a very significant influx of people into that area around northwest France and the Calais region at the moment, with the aim, of course, of trying to get across to the UK. They're being encouraged by the people traffickers who are showing them pictures like these, unfortunately, and saying, look, you know, you can make it across. It's relatively easy. We set you out on the water, and most times you'll get into British waters and you'll be picked up by UK authorities. And if you don't and you're returned, well, you can try again the next day. And lots of people are now coming with the aim of trying to get across the Channel at the moment. It's a very significant crisis that the Home Secretary is trying to get a handle on. She says they're getting tough with the people traffickers. Her French counterparts are saying the same. But really, every time they try to take a people trafficking gang out, another one comes in and fills its place. Why? Because it's extremely lucrative for them. They are making millions and millions of euros because they're charging over 5,000 euros a head, sometimes more, but at least 5,000 euros a head.
So what do you think the government should do about this?
Well, really, you need to try where you can to dismantle the people trafficking operations. One thing they could look at doing, and it's astonishing why we're not hearing that they are doing this, is perhaps going to the manufacturers who are making these small inflatable boats and the engines. We understand that the boats are being assembled in Turkey. They're being bought and assembled in Turkey and then transported by road, not inflated, packed up, sent over and then inflated in France before heading offshore. Engines, likewise, they are being assembled from kit in South Africa and then they're being shipped across. So you would have thought, and I'm sure the authorities are making inroads here, you would hope so anyway, to the manufacturers of these small boats and the engines to find out just who they are selling these bulk orders to at this time of year especially. And once, of course, you do that, then perhaps you can trace back the route of that these vessels are going, who is buying it, the middlemen and such like, on your way then to getting back to the people traffickers themselves.
What about the asylum system, though, itself? Because that in itself appears to... You can only claim asylum in the place that you're in. which is why people will take a perilous crossing to come to this country so they can then claim asylum in this country. Is there anything in place that is attempting to make that an easier process for people so they can actually do that without making the Channel crossing?
Yeah, I mean, there is a fierce debate over how this system should work. You've got the likes of the asylum charities, refugee charities, saying that they should have a system in place in France, around Calais and places like that, where if you're there, you can apply and be processed for asylum there. That would stop you making the hazardous journey across.
Well, you'd put out the people trafficking gangs, wouldn't you? I mean, that would pretty much wipe out that business in a heartbeat.
Well, you would think that certainly it seems like a logical way of going forward. I mean, we've got what's called the Le Truquet agreement that was Le Truquet, I should say. Yeah, that is effectively juxtaposed borders. The deal between Britain and France. So the British border, the UK border is in France. The French border is in the UK. Regardless of Brexit, that's a bilateral agreement between these two countries. And that has been working for years. So you've got, obviously, that border there, but people trying to make it to the UK anyway to claim asylum. 99% of those that arrive in small boats, if they don't disappear up country lanes, as you saw in some of the video footage there that we played a short time ago, then they are claiming asylum. And it is a long, drawn-out process because if an asylum appeal is turned down or an asylum application is turned down, then they can appeal. They have lawyers who are willing to help them, clearly, immigration lawyers and the like, and asylum lawyers. And the appeal process can not last just months, but actually span years before there's an eventual resolution to that.
The whole system doesn't really seem to be in anyone's interest the way it's working. So if somebody does get to this country, then they're processed for years, which would mean that they couldn't work. I mean, there'll be some very skilled people who are coming to this country whose talents and skills could be used in this country. I'm sure they would rather work than be put into an asylum institution. Or, you know, so the whole system really needs to be looked at. And I'm wondering, do the government have any other plans in place to try and look at this system, or is it purely they're more looking at getting the traffickers?
Well, they are at the moment looking and have systems in countries, for instance, where we have particular problems. So in Turkey, dealing and processing those who have come out of Syria, for instance. Not so much at the moment, but it has been in operation there with a view to especially taking unaccompanied minors through and putting them into the asylum system and getting them across to the UK. But remember, an awful lot of people, despite what we are told repeatedly by refugee charities, a lot of those who are arriving are not from countries that are war-torn countries. They're not coming from Syria. They are coming from countries in Africa, in Somalia, in Eritrea. Yes, countries that, you know, have pretty dysfunctional governments, and it's pretty wretched for many people living in those environments. But they're not, a lot of these places, at war to the point where you would be absolutely granted unconditional asylum if you were to end up here in the UK. But as I say, once they get into our asylum system, the trouble again is that many of these people, they throw away documentation. It's difficult for a while to prove where they come from and then prove any connections, and then let alone speaking to the government where they come from to see that if they're willing to accept them back, because often they're not. So you need a country to send them back to. You can't just offload them in the middle of the channel again. You need to, you know, we are absolutely signatories of human rights law, and we have a duty of care to look after these people that enter our asylum system, and they have to have a place to go back to that is safe.
Yeah. Well, listen, Mark, thank you so much for that insight. That's Mark White, Home Affairs and Security correspondent. Coming up after the break, it's bonfire night tonight with fireworks and huge events across the country. There's called for some vets to ban the sale of fireworks for private displays. Environmentalists also say that bright sparks are banned for climate change, but should we ban fireworks? We'll discuss that next, but first, here's your latest news headlines.
Hello, I'm Karen Roberts. Here are the latest headlines. Environmental campaigner Greta Thunberg called COP26 a failure, saying that the summit is turning into a PR event. She was speaking to thousands of young activists as they marched through Glasgow, demanding action on climate change. The protest was organised by the school strike movement, Fridays for Future. Labour and the Lib Dems have confirmed they will fight in the upcoming North Shropshire by-election after Tory MP Owen Paterson resigned over a lobbying scandal. Mr Paterson faced a 30-day ban for breaching lobbying rules, but a Conservative vote blocked the recommendation before a U-turn was made. The Education Secretary, Nadhim Zahawi, has admitted the government made a mistake when it combined a vote on disciplinary procedures with a Tory MP's suspension. Lord Patel has been appointed the new chair of Yorkshire County Cricket Club following Roger Hutton's resignation. It's after former player Azim Rafiq accused the club of institutional racism. The club has been banned from hosting international and major matches for its handling of the claims. 2 other board members have also resigned. The European Commission Vice President says that he's disappointed by the UK's efforts to reach an agreement on the Northern Ireland Protocol. Maros Sefcovic claims that after a third round of talks with Britain's Brexit Minister Lord Frost, they are no closer to an agreement. The 2 men will meet for continued talks in London next week. Work is underway to clear train tracks in Salisbury 5 days after 2 trains collided. Cranes were brought in to remove the damaged carriages. The 2 trains crashed in Salisbury's Fisherton Tunnel on Sunday night. South Western Railway says journey cancellations and delays will continue for the next 10 days. You are up to date. Back to Nana after the break.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good afternoon. A group of senior vets from the UK's leading provider of pet emergency care, Vets Now, are calling for fireworks to be banned from public sale. Now, they're urging the government to change the law, especially around bonfire night, Sainsbury's decided to stop selling fireworks in recent years, with many other retailers now offering low noise or noise-free fireworks. I'm joined by emergency vet from Vets Now, Anita Dow. Anita, welcome to the programme. Now, you see,
Thank you for having me.
I don't like fireworks at all. I think that they're just pretty much death sticks, ultimately, because if something goes wrong, you're in trouble. Do you see a spike in cases this time of year with these fireworks and pets?
Absolutely. We see a whole array of side effects with pets because of fireworks, with lost pets, with the mildest or stress and anxiety, but you also see injuries that result in loss of life, unfortunately, in the worst cases.
You see, it doesn't make sense to me why anyone would want, ultimately, it's a sort of explosive in their home and think that that would be any fun. What is it, you talked about stress with these pets and things, what is it about the fireworks that gets them so stressed out? And is there any way back if a pet is so stressed because of a firework?
So really it is just the unpredictability and the volume of the noise. If they happen to be outside as well, it's the flashing in the sky, but also if you're close enough, you can feel them sometimes as well. And all of those things, it's an unexpected, sudden noise. We can't explain that to them. And so they instantly have a fear response. And if that fear response is severe enough, unfortunately, no, they go into their survival mode, their fight or flight mode. And it is extremely difficult to be able to bring an animal back down from that while there's still ongoing noises in the environment.
So how do you, for those who could be brought back from that, how do you treat them?
So I suppose it depends on the injury, or if we're talking the emotional side of things, a lot of it is making them feel safe at home, getting them inside, making a nice quiet den for them inside. Passive calming activities are a really good way to try and help bring their level of arousal down as well. So licking and chewing and snuffling for food, they release really nice, happy, relaxing chemicals into their brain, which helps them to feel happy and more relaxed in certain situations. And also just remembering to give them comfort as well, because one of the things that a lot of people think is that you make their fear worse if you comfort them, but you can't reinforce that fear. So if your pet is seeking you out for that comfort, whether it's verbal or they need that physical contact, give it to them, because you're not going to make their phobia of fireworks any worse by giving them that comfort.
I've got a phobia about fireworks. So as a calming exercise, if I say I have a little dog and I'm about to spark out some fireworks and I know that my pet's going to be frightened, what should I do? How should I manage them?
So ideally, if you're going to have fireworks in your own back garden, then I would send your dog to your friend's house for the night.
All right.
But if they're going to be in your home, then really I would have some nice music on for them and start all of these preparations well before you're going to let off those fireworks. So have them in their quiet place, have some music going or some loud television, whatever they find that blocks out that noise for them. Give them a nice rewarding activity. So whether it's, peanut butter on a licking mat or a nice delicious chew toy to chew on, give them all of those things before that scary activity starts, because it will lower the importance for them. And in some cases, if they just have milder stress and anxiety or fear associated with fireworks, they won't even notice that they're going on if they're already employed in a really positive, rewarding activity.
Well, Anita, thank you very much for talking to us, emergency vet from Vets Now. God, they'll never trust you again if you give them peanut butter on a chewing stick and then the firework goes off, will they? What do you think, Pat?
I love peanut butter. Can I have some peanut butter on a chewy stick?
Peanut butter.
I love that.
I'm a dog lover. We've always had Labradors, but I inherited my daughter's dog. She got a toy poodle, right? And he's now become my dog because she went off to university. He's lovely, right? And I'm rushing back tonight. My mother-in-law's at the moment looking after him because the fireworks are going off. And let's face it, they've been going off for weeks. Where we should make the ban is they shouldn't be available until, say, Diwali, which should have been happening. Hindus let them off there as well. But also what we don't need is the big Chinese ones you can buy. I don't know if your favourite subject. The big Chinese ones in the garden. That's where we're going wrong. A couple of sparklers, a Catherine wheel and some rockets. If you've got a dog, be responsible. That's where it's at. But you know, these joyless people want to take all the fun away. Let's have more major firework displays, which we can all go to, because they're much better than.
What about the environment, though? I mean, come on.
The environment. We're never going to be able to do anything.
Abby, shush now, John.
No, but come on, back me up.
But I mean, yeah, I do. I can't believe I'm saying I agree with John. Apart from all the
agree
with John, we're getting weird. But I think yes, I agree with John to the extent that we're becoming such a joy-averse society that actually it's going to become literally where people are going to come around and say, we're just checking to see what you've got, and you can only have a sparkler. How sad. Is everyone doing this?
We'll all be like Sadiq Khan when he wouldn't have the fireworks and we had to have it visual.
And also,
he's not doing it again this year.
Yeah,
That's not what we want to do.
I'll tell you what, I've got an idea, and I think we should go into business. Headphones for dogs. Literally, you know those noise cancellers? Put them on little Poochie. What's the poodle's name?
Ambi.
Ambi. Anyway,
it's not my dog. It's actually called Ambelucius or something. Yeah, and it's out of that David Bowie film.
Would the dog let you do that?
You know what I mean?
John, would the dog let you do that, then? Would it let you put the
Well, that's the best
thing. Yeah, but you're not going to... I mean, she was suggesting things like massaging. Are you going to massage a tortoise? A tortoise, because it's stressed.
They won't trust you after a while. Next time you start doing the massage again...
Exactly, but the headphones...
What's going on? Well, the headphones isn't such a bad idea on one level, because my wife came back from the vets and she said, oh, Ambi, he's got cataracts now. He hasn't got much longer left.
Oh, thanks, John.
And if I let off a few bangers...
She's not watching.
No, but listen, this is funny. She said, with the cataracts, we can give him goggles. I said, what? Yes, you can put goggles on his eye. I said, you mean contact lenses? She said, no, they're like swimming goggles. I said, you think I'm walking down the road? It's already... embarrassing enough with a ginger poodle. But now you want to have goggles.
Now you're telling me he's ginger.
Come on.
But I mean, seriously though, I mean, rather than going through all the putting on music, I mean, for heaven's sake, put your pet in the room and put a bit of Rolling Stones on. I would just literally have, really fluffy little furry headphones.
I can imagine
how cute.
The dog would know if you get here's peanut butter on a stick.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be awful.
Here's this. The dog's thinking, what's coming next?
But
I don't trust you.
But put
the goggles come on and then the headphones.
And then put the headphones.
It's like when you drive to town with the dog. If you're anywhere near the vets, he starts carrying. He knows what's going on, yeah.
But I mean, tell you what, you could play music through the headphones, like the Scooby-Doo theme or something.
I think fireworks, basically, they're quite deadly, aren't they? Let's be honest.
We just need to be sensible.
Seriously.
Well, only if you let them off in someone's face.
Do you think that... But even...
Sorry, I don't know why I'm laughing at that.
I don't even know why people should be allowed to buy fireworks in that way. I mean, OK, so I slightly take your point with the displays.
Yeah.
That sounds like a...
We need more of those.
Idea. More of those, or less of them, but those rather than...
Official displays.
Being able to buy them like that.
Yeah,
they're actually dangerous.
Well, also...
They're actually dangerous.
They're also a rip-off. They cost a fortune and they've all gone in a couple of seconds. Sounds familiar.
I went to the same place there as well. I don't know why.
I don't know why we bother. But it's the big China. I don't know if you've seen these pictures. I bought one year. It was 60 quid or something. And it's a box.
Like a rocket?
And it's rockets and other stuff. It's like doing your own display, like Sadiq Khan's, your own display. It's ridiculous. They're too big for back gardens. So I would curtail that slightly, but I don't think we should ban it. If you want to have some spark, there's nothing more.
Well, there's dog TV coming out now, isn't there?
So they can watch that.
Watch dog TV.
Dog TV with the things on, with a bit of music. Oh, how lovely! Put Scooby-Doo on.
Scooby-Doo.
Fantastic.
It hadn't been for those pesky kids.
Hey, Scoob. I love it.
I do a really Shaggy. Sorry. Right, it's time for us to move on. I digress.
Shall we not drink next time before we start?
Debates, the part of the show where we find some standout stories and discuss them. I've got my trusty buzzer. When I press it, the panel have to basically shut up and we move on to the next story. So let's start with this one. OK, so the UK's Royal Horticultural Society, which helps train gardeners, says demand for its vocational training programmes increased 58% this year. So are more of us leaving office jobs for the great outdoors? Abby, John, who wants to go first?
Oh, thank you, my darling. What's the question again?
I'll go first.
Let John go first. You weren't listening.
These people working outside, it'll last till mid-January when it's absolutely freezing and soaking wet, and then they want to be back in an office job. But the vocational courses, I will tell you, my wife's a keen gardener. She's doing one at the moment, and you do it via your computer, then you take pictures of what you've done, etc., etc. And she says it's fascinating. So if you want to do it, do it. But the idea that everybody's going to move to the country, that's the other one they keep going on about, and people are also going to do gardening type jobs rather than work in offices is rubbish.
Yeah.
Oh!
I didn't even press
it. Stopped you before you started.
It's very unruly, that buzzer.
Go on, Abby, what you got to say?
I was going to say that I think, this again, it's the whole part of the whole green agenda. They want us to basically live in sort of eco yurts. You know, and literally plough have our own little patch of grass, no cars, Chinese goods, and basically, and that'll be it.
Thank you, well done.
Thank you. That's enough of that one.
But if everybody started looking like Felicity Kendall in The Good Life, I think a lot of people would get into it.
I think so.
Right, let's have a look at this. Dog TV, the television network for dogs. We touched on it earlier. It's going to launch in the UK next week. It'll be available to stream for $6.99 a month. It should really launch today, shouldn't it, on Bonfire Night, to save some of those poor dogs from the awfulness of the fireworks. It's going to be $6.99 a month to stimulate the dog and stimulate them and to stop them from spending the whole day sleeping. Oh, that's not fair, Abby. What do you think? Dog TV.
Is it going to be called Territorial TV?
Oh,
come on!
I love it.
That's what I pay with the big bucks.
That's it, Territorial.
A pun already.
Good.
So it's a dog channel. It's not for dog lovers. It's for dogs.
Dogs, actual dogs. Dogs are going to watch it.
Actual dogs. Is there going to be a pause button?
Oh, I love it.
I've always said your bark's worse than your bites.
Oh,
here we go. That joke had a pedigree.
They're both barking mad.
Yeah, we're off. I don't know if anyone's tuned in. They'll be like, what the hell are these lot on?
These jokes are making me feel very woof.
Speak for yourself.
That's terrible. Right, we move on. Do we need a station for dogs? No, I think the answer is that. Now, a TikToker says that she was dumped by a man over text because she'd been vaccinated against COVID. I'll just apologise for John's language there. Did you?
Did I swear?
Swore there.
I didn't swear.
He said he didn't swear.
No, I don't think he did.
Well, I'm going to apologise if you have. But anyway, right, been vaccinated against COVID. Apparently,
I'd like to know what.
Start again. In case you missed it, because a TikToker says that she was dumped by a man over text because she'd been vaccinated against COVID. Apparently, he sent her messages saying that she would have mutant children. Oh, dear. Is this right? You should dump someone because they've been vaccinated?
My favourite topic. You know what?
Oh, yes.
And I've always maintained this. Your medical decision is your medical decision.
Yes,
it is not to do with anyone else. So if someone's dumping you because you've been vaccinated, that person's not worth going out with in the first place because he's clearly insane.
Why? Just because he's wanting to make sure that you...
want to make sure what?
But he's just been dumped because she has been vaccinated.
Yeah, precisely. So what I'm saying is what business is it of his? If she's been... Because he's judging her on a medical decision, and I'd be the same the other way around, because I haven't been vaccinated, so I'd be the same if a man said, oh, well, I'm sorry, I can't come near you. I'd say, well, it's a good thing, because I wouldn't want you anyway. That's my view.
But what about the other way around? So, because there was that thing some dating sites put up whether people have been vaccinated or not, and I personally would want someone who's been vaccinated. That's just
and that's your person. But it's got to work the other way around.
Well,
it has to work the other way around. You see what I mean? Because I haven't been, so I'd feel really... I wouldn't want to be with someone who didn't want to be with me because I hadn't had a medical procedure. I think that's just strange.
Oh, but what if they wanted? But what if it's because they had a medical procedure? So it's all to do with medical procedures. No.
Yeah, I mean, that's just really weird. It's like, imagine if someone hadn't had a flu jab, I'd be like, I don't really care. I don't care.
Or
have you got a big...
Or if they have had a flu jab, this is the point here, they have had one, you're not going to go out with them.
Have you got big muscles, I was going to say.
John?
Mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
I wouldn't... I mean, obviously, I'm not on the market, you know, got the old force field on here, ladies, but no, I would not... No, you are disappointed. You're going to be even more disappointed now. I wouldn't go within 100 yards of a woman who hasn't been vaccinated. I don't want...
That's not what you said last night, John.
I don't think so, Abby.
Watch out, his wife's watching, you're in trouble, Abby.
Sorry.
No, she'll be at work.
You can have him back.
Let me tell you, no, I wouldn't. And but for the other way round, it's just crazy. But it's just so typical of the mad anti-vaxxers that surround us. And let me finish.
How come it's one and not the other?
I'm the one that's allowed to.
Because the other way, you've got less chance of passing it on, transmissibility, etc., etc. I'm sorry, Abby. The majority of people in this country are getting vaccinated. I know.
What about antibodies?
You haven't, but that's up to you.
Antibodies, precisely. I thought antibodies are in a better shape than you are.
Oh,
that's a matter of opinion.
That certainly
let's move
is.
on. And finally, I say no more. Do you like chips? Well, if you do, it's probably not as much as Boris Bennett. He's on a mission to collect a chip from every Wetherspoons in Britain. And this is what he's got so far. Boris wrote in a Facebook post that he really does walk around with a trading card collection book full of chips. They must be going rotten, surely. Have you ever collected anything as stupid as that?
John.
Have you, John?
No. I did know somebody who collected chewing gum.
I used to do that.
And by the side of a bed, put it next to the bed. And then it eventually ends up like a statue of chewing gum.
Disgusting.
I think it's disgusting too.
Yeah.
You know, I used to peel off, when I was young, and very, very young, I might add, I used to peel off chewing gum from the floor. I must have been like 3 or 4. And I'd peel it off if it looked like a good bit, then I'd actually start chewing it.
Off the pavement?
Off the pavement. I can and I can actually even remember... This
Press the buzzer.
I need to stop talking.
Oh, my God.
I did. And
I'm stunned.
When there was a good one, I was like, I can almost remember the one that I
the
peeled
juicy.
That was very good.
Well, nice and juicy. The flavour.
See it now, on the pavement, a little edge on it. It was disgusting. I don't know what I was doing. How you got?
Oh, my God. I'm just trying to think of if anyone was... anything...
Did you ever collect anything?
Not really, no. I'm quite a boring...
Did you ever collect stamps?
No, not really stamps either.
Period, but...
No, I mean, I suppose records. CD, records was my thing. But, I mean, no, I'm quite...
Other people's jokes?
Well, what about this chip then?
No, I certainly wouldn't bloody steal one of your jokes. Sorry, I certainly would not... Blooming hell, I wouldn't steal one of his jokes. I'm trying to think any... No, I haven't known.
Well, what about this
that
chip
weird...
this guy's is collecting chips? Is that good?
Oh, I think he does need medical help.
Put them together and make a mash.
But surely all the chips from Wetherspoons are the same,
potato in them,
aren't they?
Is there? Yeah. There is, I'm sure there is.
Last time I saw potatoes,
well,
it's like McDonald's.
1976.
They're all the same.
Well, they're sort of cookie cutter chips that you go from one to the next and it's all the same, like their pubs, I suppose, with no music. Gah. Right, so on today's show, we've been asking, should the UK introduce a blanket ban on e-scooters? A load of you have been getting in touch with this and your views. Now, Cherry, it says this: they're not used sensibly. Idiots are attracted to them. They'll be banned until it's easier to ensure they cut out when they're ridden on the pavement. That would be a good thing, wouldn't it? I agree with you, Cherry. Or just basically cut out as soon as the person puts their foot on them. Tom says no, they're very useful. My aunt uses one to visit her friends. Don says, lots of grumpy old people upset by scooters. Just like to point out that it's a lot easier to get by protesters in the roads with these. Yes, fair enough, that is true. Dan says, a blanket ban, really? They're already illegal on public roads and pavements. How about the police enforce the law and confiscate the e-scooters that should not be on our roads? Good point. I don't even know we're supposed to actually ride them. You're not really allowed to have them on the pavements either. James says it's the sensible use that's the issue, sadly. To many people, getting injured and knocked down by reckless riders who can't control them. Seen it both in London and Liverpool. There you go, we did ask. Thank you for that. Not just London. There you go, Gaunty. Or John, even. It's okay for councils to hire them out, but not for private individuals to use their own. And according to our Twitter poll, we asked you whether e-scooters should be banned. 66% of you said yes, we should have a blanket ban on e-scooters here in the UK. See, they agree with me. I think the same thing as well. Would you ban them, John?
No.
Really?
I'm not really into banning, and as I said before, regulate them, licence them, move from there, and make people sensible on
Abby?
them.
He's not into banning, apart from people who haven't been vaccinated. But anyway...
No, I didn't say ban you, I just said I wouldn't go out
there. You're not into banning.
I know you're taking it as an insult.
You're not into banning.
I'm going to say...
She's taking it as a big insult.
Thank you so much
Principles.
to my panel,
Principles.
John Gaunt and Abby Rodgers, for joining me. Thank you so much for you guys at home, for your company, for getting in touch. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place, 4 o'clock. Be there or be square.
Hello again. A lot more cloud across the UK today compared to yesterday, but actually many places still dry and bright. It is a little milder compared to recent days. It will turn even milder again this weekend, but also windier as this low approaches. Ahead of the low, this warm front bringing additional cloud cover across the UK. But generally, well, most places are dry and bright. And as we end the day, decent enough weather for bonfire night with clear spells in the east, cloud elsewhere, any rain confined to northwestern hills and coasts. But it will turn increasingly wet for western Scotland in particular by the end of the night. With thicker cloud and a bit more of a breeze overnight, temperatures will hold up. A frost-free night for all of us, but a cloudy start to the day, and in northern and western Scotland, an increasingly wet start to the day. That wet and increasingly windy weather sweeps its way across the rest of Scotland, Northern Ireland, into northern England by lunchtime, as well as Wales. Coastal gales accompanying the rain, and the rain heavy over western hills. But it's replaced by sunshine and showers in Scotland and Northern Ireland, and ahead of it, some dry weather and also a mild day for all of us, 12 to 14 Celsius. The rain eases as it pushes south across southern parts of the UK on Saturday evening, clears away by midnight, and then clear spells, but increasingly windy across the UK, particularly in the north, and for northern Scotland, risk of gales or severe gales combined with high seas could be some significant coastal impacts. Showery rain continues for Scotland, but elsewhere it dries up through the night with some clear spells or some sunshine as we begin Sunday. Still, though, a windy day to come, especially over the higher ground of northern England and Scotland, and to the east of higher ground. Could be some transport disruption because of those gusty winds. But for most, Sunday's looking drier than Saturday with some brightness, and it stays changeable next week.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning.